How are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, Anthony. Good to see you again. I
Yes, sir.
trust you have uh, reflected on all the wisdom that we went through last week, and you're ready to jump back in again and offer insight because it's going to be you two going on right now. I'm a definitely a trumpet player, and I think we're
I'm
going to talk
sorry.
about warm up and tuning, and neither one of those matter to me.
Yeah, in fact, when I play trumpet, I always wonder why isn't anyone else playing?
Here, see what's going on, guys. It's time.
Yeah,
Trumpets just warm up high, loud, and fast.
that's
That's
right.
all there is to it.
And wear out
Higher,
quick.
faster,
And
louder.
we could go into
That's
all
it.
kinds of other stories related to those attributes, but we won't do that at this moment.
No, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me and the some of the directors in this area for sure. This hopefully will be helpful to them because there's some terrific kids in this area, and hopefully this will help them. That's awesome. Thank you guys for doing it.
So, Mike, I'm going to set this up this way. We did a podcast that we call it spring cleaning, things that we can do in the spring that nobody really wants to do, but we all kind of need to.
Right, the
One
old
of the
punch
first things
card.
we talked about was tone.
Yes.
I'm not sure that I put tuning too far behind that. If we don't
No,
work
well,
tuning
intonation has the word tone inside it.
and so so talk to us.
As we always tell kids, without a good tone, you really can't tune.
Mm,
So we have to get a good tone. And I've clinicked with Anthony and kind of assessed listening sessions with Anthony, and I know that's an important thing to him. And so I want Anthony to kind of jump into this about when you start warm ups and start working with kids, whether it was your own band at your various schools or whether it's a clinic. How do you address that quickly? Not your explanation quickly, but how do you address it?
Yeah, in a concert band setting, come in, they warm up. They all the students. I'm a pretty liberal, open. Not that's the only thing I'm probably liberal on, but on how they sit down and warm up.
Right.
But to have an opportunity to just some of them want to warm up with a lot of notes, some of them want to warm up with tone, and every instrument's a little different. But there's a standard that they do their own warm up and they're warmed up before I step up, and they're tuned up even. Now, if they're running late from a class, they need to run faster in the hallway. They need to be warmed up and tuned up. So that's kind of how I'm in. When they walk in the room, they need to have it ready to go. And if they're behind, they need to put that focus on getting that warm up and tuning as soon as possible.
Very cool. Very cool. The only thing I would say on that is like when I do like middle school bands, I never let my middle school band kids warm up on their own.
Yeah.
High school, you're right. I
And
did
I did a
exactly
lot
what
of
you did.
observing in middle schools, and I just
Yeah.
haven't, but at a high
Yeah.
school level,
Yeah.
and I also need, that's just getting to the chair. After that, let's just jump into that. Let's say we're at a middle school.
Okay.
I just start with an F concert. I mean, and this is going to sound weird. Is this the time to really go into something weird of all the possibilities?
This is the Ask Mike cave. You can say whatever is on your heart.
Well, there's so many different ways to do it that everybody does. And, and over my career, I've seen it and I thought, I'll try that. No, okay. But I have had so many good, and this were high school band kids. I've had, 4 all-staters in a band at one time, 4 clarinet all-staters.
Oh my gosh.
And you just go, wow. And I've also had none in the band.
Yeah.
But the point is, you get
and you
that
just go,
band-
wow.
yeah. There's a whole new podcast in itself. I just let everybody warm up on their own, and then I get that clarinet player. They make sure their
Yeah.
F concert is right, not just close, not with it is right. And so I now start every time I do this, the first year clarinet player does a G, the second one matches it. Everybody in the room can tell if it's in tune or not. If it's not in tune, we all kind of raise one eyebrow. If it is in tune, you can see kind of just the slightest tick of your head with a smile, and everybody goes, you two are in tune. No more waves. The sound is matching, and it sounds like one. And then I go to the third clarinet. And then now you've got 2 that are in. The third one doesn't play with the right pitch, the right tone quality, the right balance. Everybody in the room knows it. And there's nothing worse than the whole band just kind of tilting their head with a look like, but that is motivation. Clarinet's I never was taught that way, and I never did it that way until my last 15 years, because I knew that the clarinets are going to have something brutally critical, and
Yeah.
they're going to deal with throat tones. Oh, but you can't do that on, that's how I do it.
Yeah, they
And
still
then
play G, don't
after I did all the clarinets, everybody in the room just had a listening and tuning session. All the clarinets are playing with a good sound in tune. Then I say first chairs, and every first chair in the room plays the F concert. So you add a new dimension to that F.
Okay.
Then I hold up my two fingers. That means add second chair, third, and we need to hear them enter inside the sound in tune until everybody's playing. And you've got this F concert that everybody's listening to pitch and they're listening to band sound. And I stop once, take a breath. Everybody plays another F concert, beginning, middle, and end of the note. Turn it over, and we could start rehearsal.
Nice.
Let me ask a question real quick, if you don't mind, Anthony. Terminology for our young, our new teachers.
Mhm.
When you talk about entering inside the sound, what do you mean by inside the sound?
Well, I'm a pretty literal person. So
Okay.
if someone plays, but I'll tell you my biggest advantage is I can put trust in the students who are listening more than me listen. If I say that's wrong, they go, yeah, it's. But if you're kids, they are taught to just kind of go, the kind of the head kind of, that speaks screaming volumes. And if you're coming in and you're out of tune and 70 of your closest friends go, I mean, you
Yeah.
got them. But if they
Right.
go, boy, there's nothing more rewarding than a head just nodding, almost a quirky smile in the corner. So I don't really do tuning. I just facilitate the rest of the band to listen to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
when it's good, they acknowledge it. And when it's bad, they let them know it. Does that make sense?
It does.
And
Yeah.
and back to your getting inside the sound, if they're playing it in tune and it's way louder than everybody else, then that's not inside the sound. And we all know that, because once it doesn't take very long. I do all regions a lot, and that's how I'll start. I mean, what is it, Thursday night, Friday, and you have the concert.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the time we go on the stage for the concert, I'll have the principal clarinet player play a G, and they're responsible to play it tune. They've got a tuner. I don't have a tune, but they play it in tune, and then don't even point. You just look at the second chair, and then they both get in tune. Then you just go all the clarinets, first chairs. And I mean, it's kind of a magical thing. And I don't know where I learned that. I mean, you've got
Sure.
everything from Gary Garner to all the people in the world, but it's just something that I've developed very comfortable.
Was it kind of safe to say, would I be wrong if I said be aware as you come in, be aware of all those that you're playing with? Make sure that you're not just, here I come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a matter of matching pitch, tone, and volume.
Energy. Yeah, absolutely.
And intensity, or whatever, however we want to do that. But yeah, that's a really cool way, because it's amazing too, because everyone has their own little routine. And what
Mhm.
happens is that even in all region situation, they learn that routine. And you're right, all you have to do is kind of look and nod,
Mhm.
or they know that they memorize that look of this is not in tune. If you're in the middle of the concert and you give
They
that
know it.
look, they're like, fix,
Mm.
fix. But I love what Anthony said about allowing the students to do it,
Oh, yeah.
because we want all the students to be like little bitty band directors. They should be analyzing everything that happens instead of waiting for us to give this information from the summit of the mountain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That kind of BS kind of thing.
I also
So
think, Mike, that that intonation, I don't know that people say this. I think it's a very physical thing. You can feel it when when it finally locks in, you go, like you said, everybody goes,
yeah,
just that
yeah.
little nod. There it
It's
is.
very satisfying.
And conversely, when it's not in tune, you can't quite.
You cringe.
Nobody's comfortable. Yeah.
Yes. But to Anthony's point, though, the way he does it is so cool, because I don't know how many clinics I've gone to that you'll hear two flutes play almost a half step apart, and they don't even hear each other. They just literally just play, and bless their little hearts. They're both decent little players, but they've never given consideration that maybe I should match this person. Or they're both thinking, I wish they'd tune to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like a typical trumpet player. If the band would just all tune to me, this would be
Right.
fine. I wouldn't have to worry about it.
The arrogance of it all.
The arrogance
right?
of it all. How arrogant of this band to not tune to me.
The rest of y'all are wrong.
That's right.
But all of that comes with and it doesn't take long. Like you say, we hear it. What you point out, what do you hear? And everybody goes, indigestion is what I hear. And then once you adjust and it's right, everybody in the room, you can see the tension go out of their shoulder.
Right. It releases tension. Yeah.
That's right. And so everybody wants to be inside that sound. And that's kind of in my latter years, I mean, probably those last years in Allen, I mean, I didn't have time
Yeah.
to sit down and I mean, here's what we're doing.
Play
Get
it. Pull in, push out, pull in, push
Yeah,
out.
no, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was pretty cool. So, but it can be done at the lowest level. You start with it, and the director may have to be the one that says, roll that flute
Mhm.
in a little bit. And then all of a sudden they do, and the pitch matches, and everybody in the room goes, ah. And
Yeah.
then you capitalize on it. You look at the band and go, isn't that better? And nod your head yes. And the whole room's go, yes. And that girl's thinking, I'll never play that sharp again. And I'm like, yes, you're right. You won't.
And I think a really great tool I used with my beginning brass players, and I think it works in middle school, I'd have two kids play, and then the rest of the section that's in there would put their hand up next to their head. And then as it got better in tune, they'd raise their hand. If it got worse out of tune, they would lower their hand. So this was out of tune, full extension was in tune. So you could hear the progress. And the kids actually they would look around to see what the hands were doing. You know what I mean? Because the kids are honest. They're like, yeah, that's better, 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 better. Oh, someone went too far, getting worse, getting worse, getting worse. Warmer, 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 colder, colder. You know, and kids love that game because it gets them all involved. Now, are some kids just copying other kids? Probably. You
Yeah,
know.
but what a great opportunity to actually teach critical listening for
Yeah,
kids.
yeah. So most of them do listen. You're exactly right. It's very satisfying to hear something in tune. It's just something
yeah.
within our DNA, I think, that God made us that way. We just want to hear things in tune. And if it's out of tune, it's uncomfortable to us. It's
Yeah,
like
I
an itchy shirt.
I must store that someday
What's that?
in tune. You know?
Yeah, that would be a good name for a
See,
store.
We think so much of in tune. But I'm going to say that tuning, like most of what we have established in our rehearsals, what's going to happen, that may take me 30 seconds to do an entire band that way.
Yeah,
And some people will go, we're going to tune. I just don't have time to tune.
that's right. Oh, yeah.
And
I don't have time.
I just
to work on
cringe
tuning.
thinking, you don't have time to not tune your band. I mean, you've got to, and that's the quickest way.
Yeah. And that off on a tangent, you know how famous we are in tangents, Derek. But you know, sometimes directors pick so hard a program, they literally feel like they don't have time to tune.
Yeah, they're wrong.
Pick easier music. Pick easier music. Make sure there is time to work
But
on
I think also, Mike and Anthony, that Anthony, we have this conversation about different things, but when you choose your program, you're choosing your rating. When you choose, blah, blah, if you choose how you choose to tune or not, you
Yeah,
might be
not.
choosing your rating already.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it doesn't matter if you know the notes. If they don't sound like the notes, then what good is
Absolutely.
that?
And even to me, the step before that, just make sure that not that every kid's going to get a great tone, because that's almost a physical impossibility in most bands, but work on tone, you know, because sometimes I've seen just most horrendous tone qualities.
Mhm.
And the kid's playing in a tuner and it's really sharp, and then they pull their tuning slide out till it barely hangs off the horn. And you know,
they're still playing.
and they're still playing sharp because their teeth are together. Yeah, it's impossible to tune. You can tune a lawnmower quicker than a person who has a bad tone, you know.
You know, back to about as simple basics. I don't know how many times I say the word tone, and just for the kid, I say
That
say
vertical
tone.
sound, tone.
And
Yeah.
and if you play your instrument thinking the word and playing the note tone, it's going to get a better sound than if they just say T, of course.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, there's a lot of real simple ways how you present that. So,
yeah.
and Rodney Klett, man, I learned more from him at tech band camps we did for decades.
Yeah.
And I would go in and try to figure out how in the world does his band sound like they do. And, Rodney's old German descendant, and he always go tone, tone. And I forgot to think, at first I was would kind of mock it to a certain extent, but then I go, if those tubas would play with tone,
Yeah.
it'd get better. And sure
Yeah.
enough,
Yeah.
to this day I use, well, that's one of the many things I've gleaned from some great musicians
Yeah.
from listening.
Definitely with tone. And I love that because I try to, and the kids will attach to this. If you tell them there's vertical sounds and horizontal sounds,
Mhm.
Okay.
vertical sound is tone. You kind of lower your tongue at oh, 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 oh. A horizontal sound is like our West Texas drawl. Eh.
Pinch it
Your
up.
tongue's real fat in the back of your mouth.
Mhm.
And that's a horizontal sound if you talk like that. It's a vertical sound if I talk like that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So we, even though they don't talk like that per se, we have to mimic that by making our lips come together and yawning with the back of our throat.
Right.
And that creates that chamber of acoustics, I guess, and it's the kids will attach to, because I can just say, I want a vertical sound. And after they learn that, that definition, then they change. I mean, it's amazing, especially in low brass.
Yeah.
The low brass are it's the hardest to me to make a really good tone because they're dealing with such a big mouthpiece and such huge streams of air.
And they close their teeth. They
they
learn
close
to
their-
play in 6th grade with their teeth closed, and then you have to get them to stop saying T to toe to toe tone.
Yeah.
It is.
Because their teeth are closed because it's easier to hit the notes. They don't miss pitch.
Well, in the warm up, we got to the first note,
Yes,
but after that,
that's right. We can do a concert F now. Now, where do we go from here?
I may, and this is at the beginning of the season versus the end of the season. I mean, we'll go through some Remington, ba, da, 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 and make sure that they're in tune. We'll do some techniques, some tonguing. There's a book. It's so funny out here. I was talking to Josh Alwith, and I was thinking of what chorale would you play, and the Claude Smith Symphonic Warm-Ups for Band is a college band level book.
Yeah.
It's hard, but it's got some easy stuff. I think it's the best book for top bands because you've got everything in it.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming because I used that book for like 32 years.
Yeah. It's a good book.
But in it has some lip slurs, it has some technique, it has some etudes, a chorale, and on the back it has counting, which I'm a counting freak anyway.
Yeah.
I want them to learn that system. But early in the season, I will take them through it. Some of the questions are how do you prep your band getting ready for the music? That music may come way late in the rehearsal or way late in the season.
Yes. You're exactly right.
There's been a mini rehearsal we get through and we've played the chorale and everybody's like,
And the bell's ringing.
it's time. Tomorrow we're going to test on so-and-so, but we didn't go over today. Well, you might want to pull that out.
Yeah, and that's okay because you've built the foundation
Absolutely.
of the house. The foundation is laid.
But so it's a shift of where your emphasis is on warm-ups and tuning. Very much so. Because by the time those last 4 weeks before UIL, we play an F concert with the first clarinets. Everybody warms up on their own. You play that series. I said, principal clarinet, all the clarinets, first chairs, full band. We start playing. But the first 60% in preparation, it's a grading scale. We just hammer those fundamentals.
Yeah. I agree with you 100% and I like how Anthony starts with clarinets, because I'll state this, and I might get some blowback on this. I've never heard a good band without a tuned bad tone clarinet.
That's right. That's exactly.
I've never heard that. It doesn't exist. Now, I've heard a good band with slightly out of tune, bad tone quality trombone or a trumpet, and I don't know why I can work my mind around that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's something about the clarinets are our violins of our symphony. You know what I mean? They have to be correct. And it's just, if the tone quality is bad in your clarinets, you're not focusing on them. So many directors are, for the most part, it seems like a lot of directors, for high school directors, tend to be brass players. I think it's because we're egotistical. And we rise to where we think we need to be a high school director. That's all kind of a bunch of junk anyway. But we tend to ignore our woodwinds. My first 10 years of teaching, I didn't realize I had flutes and clarinets. I just,
Oh, that's funny.
I just taught the brass players and the percussion. I had like a drum and bugle corps going to concert
I
contests.
was going to say it's because your core.
And every year they'd say, you know, upper woodwind intonation, clarinet tone quality, flute too shrill. Oh yeah, whatever. And after about 10 years, I thought, I've got 10 years of critique sheets saying the same
Oh, yeah.
thing. I better pull my head out of somewhere and figure this out. So I invited a lot of players from a Midwestern State University who were
Okay.
instructors to come out and say, all right, I'm an idiot. Take me from square one. What do I do? And they did. And once I dove into that, it changed the entire concept of what my band was doing.
Mm.
Because and it might be the same way for woodwind players. They might ignore the brass because we tend to teach to our strength because we feel like a better teacher.
Sure.
You know, it kind of feeds our ego a little bit, maybe, because we feel like we're in control and it's in our comfort zone. You know, so whatever instrument you play out there, make sure to concentrate on those other instruments. You know, and I love what you said about the Claude T. Smith book, but whatever book you choose, stick to whatever your Bible is.
Yeah.
I know directors who use the old Fussell book.
Mhm.
They still, in the Fussell book is like the beginning, like Moses bringing the 10 Commandments down from the mountain. That was the first, the Fussell was the first technique book, I think, that I've ever encountered. And that's what we used when I was in high school. And like, I call it the blue book, that's Standards of Performance. And,
Mm.
you know, it's a beautiful book, but it's just the Fussell book for dummies. You know what I mean?
That's funny.
It's all written out where you just turn to page 14, where we had to figure out, I'm a B flat instrument, so I have to read /12. You know what I mean? You had to know the instrumentation and what key you were. But whatever you have, stick to it. And like Anthony said, if it takes the whole period, that's okay.
Oh, man.
That's okay. You can always switch tunes later, you know, because if you don't have good
Yeah.
tuning and tone, you're not going to be successful at contests.
And that,
Period.
that I think is where a lot of people talk about, well, how much time do you spend on your music? How much time do you spend on warm-ups?
Yeah.
And, you know, you get through with marching season, you're split up into bands, or you've changed the environment. First thing you're saying is don't blow the lacquer off of every bell.
Right.
Okay. But then you just start with let's keep it fundamental and make it where they are hearing, and you have to make it fun, yes, because sometimes you can make some fun jokes about it, but once they get that success, then they feel the importance of the quality of that, of the tone and the technique and tuning. And the kids, that's where those games are established.
Yeah.
You know, that's where you can take time and really raise your hand if you know who's out of tune. You
Yeah.
know,
Or point at them. If you know the kids really well, you say, trumpets, point at the one that's out of tune.
Oh.
And they're like convicts trying to get cigarettes, man. They just turn and point.
You don't really have
Oh,
to
it's
know them that
John.
well. They works in all region bands.
They'll turn on each other.
You give them 2 chances to correct it on their own.
Yeah, so point at the one that's out of tune.
But
So
yeah,
I'm gonna
go ahead.
I'm gonna ask you a question, Anthony, because Mike and I have had this conversation before, talking about when do you get to the music, or sometimes trying to figure out what's most important. Mike and I have talked about before, when you're adjudicating and you're listening to a group and you can hear that they've been taught about tone, you can hear that they are in tune, you can hear that there's been a lot of this foundational teaching happening. I don't know, but as a person, sometimes I'm a little bit more forgiving if somebody missed a note, as opposed
absolutely.
to
Yeah.
when nobody's in tune and nobody's making characteristic sound. Every little thing just is like,
Yeah, yeah.
Agree,
Well,
disagree?
To start with, on a marching sheet, it's 60% music and 40% playing.
Right.
In my book, I don't
Yeah,
know what
yeah,
it's 60-40.
Yeah. And
So
the first box is tone.
yeah.
The first box on the judging
that's
sheet is
right.
tone.
And it's prioritized
for real.
So from a marching band standpoint, to your point, would be, I don't know how many times if a kid kind of gets, well, I say,
Flustered or whatever.
or gets a little bit, but I'm working on my marching. Let's talk about.
I love Anthony's quotes. He's like the Bob Euchre of Vanderin.
Yeah, right. But the kids kind of start in on that. Well, the marching, and I'm like, the 60% of the sheet is playing, it's tone.
Yeah.
So feet are subordinate to that, and we're going to put emphasis on it. You may be the marching machine of all time and play with a bad tone, and you're going to make it 2 or 3.
Yeah,
and I've judged bands
That's
where
happened. Yeah.
they march well and they just make a really bad sound, and you have to give them what they earned.
Yeah.
And there's some kids, let's say, that make a great sound on the football field, and their feet are not quite as accurate, but what a great sound. That's going to be 60% of my. That's usually the point that I say I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with the
Yeah.
higher rating.
Yeah.
It's simple as that,
Right.
because tone is the most important. We get so screwed up on marching band. It's about feet and how all these moves. Well, those moves got to work with tone.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it distracts your tone, it's
All that body
counterproductive.
movement has to be
Yeah.
within the tone quality of the band.
But even on stage, if you overprogram a little bit, but you're
Mhm.
making great sounds, or
Oh, I'm following you.
Yeah,
I would cut a band slack
Yeah.
if they can't quite play all the technique, but they make great sounds. I almost applaud that for
right, okay,
pushing themselves out there. And quite frankly, that I was one of those people that did that a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
Charles Strader sent me a text and said, "Hey, I was thinking about you, and I remember a day that you played 13 movements of the Carmina Burana." And I asked, "Is this still the same day as a judge?" And I've got that sheet. And no one, I think, has ever done that, and no one will ever do it again. Just ask Charles Traylor or me. But we played them all that were transcribed for the band.
That's awesome.
It's
That's
so
fun.
funny.
And
I
it's-
love that, man.
And it's so correct, because I've actually written on a critique sheet before, said, you play so pretty with such a good tone, even your wrong notes sound correct.
Yeah. Yeah, but then tone is priority.
And then they get a 1,
Yeah.
And it's harder to get a good tone on playing tune than it is to play the right notes. You can teach a monkey one banana at a time to play
Hey,
an
quit
instrument.
talking about my tuba section.
Hey, they can push down the valves and honk and grunt and rhythm and play the right rhythm. You can make that happen. It's much harder to get a band to play with ensemble sound and tuning and intonation. And
All right. Guys, you got my brain going. I warned you this would happen.
Oh, we're in trouble.
As a trumpet player, when I get above C in the staff to maybe G on top of the staff, I got some issues with intonation just by nature of the way my horn's built. Is there a rehearsal technique for that, or do we just
Absolutely.
everybody's gonna play a D or an E flat at some point.
Yeah.
So do
Play
you
it
do
in
the
tune.
same process? Do you do the same process?
I tell you what helped with me is we did this with our junior high band, and it carried over into the high school band. But we would copy out that and I wish I had the exact name of the book. It's a little gray book on intonation, and it has a sheet for each instrument that has the note, and then it has a place to draw an arrow up, an arrow down, or a dash that it's in tune. And the kids were required in junior high to get a grade to do that at home. So they would tune up first. We teach them how to tune, and they would play every note, and they'd figure out the tendency, and then they had to write in the alternate fingering that fixed it. And so every kid and every horn is different. And now, did it fix everything? No, but it sure made everything a whole lot better. Because by the time they got to me in high school, oh my gosh, it was like the trumpets knew if the E was flat on fourth space, they knew to do it 1 and 2.
Right.
Or
At least
even
you
third
created
valve.
awareness. They knew that was going to be an issue.
So they understood alternate fingerings, and that's kind of a weakness at times of a lot of band directors. They don't understand all the alternate fingerings. They don't take time to do it because they've got so much going on. But you take guys like Gary Garner, I think he knows like 41 fingerings for an F sharp on bassoon. You know what I mean? He's like a walking Wikipedia of alternate fingerings. So if I ever have a question, I can call him and Dr. Garner. We can't. Well, have you tried these 14 fingerings? He's amazing. But on a very basic level, figure out the problem notes. A C sharp on alto, a G on clarinet, a D in the staff on trumpet, D below the staff on trumpet. They're the opposite tuning tendency, so the kids should understand those, because I'll ask bands, trumpets out of tune, so now that D, is it going to normally be kind of flat or sharp? And they don't know.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of like, that's kind of basic 101, that a trumpet player should know that a low D kicks the slide, and the first valve D, fourth line is going to be flat. So you might have to do it 1 and 3.
I think it's sweet that you think that most third slides will move, Mike. That's
That is true. That's a lot of assumptions there, Mike.
They did in my band because I had a lava soap. Have you ever seen that old lava soap, the pumice?
Yep.
Yeah.
We would send them to the bathroom with the lava soap, and they had to pumice their horn until it worked,
Well,
or destroyed their horn. And then their dad called me. But go ahead, Anthony.
when I was at Tech, Gary Garner was at WT and
Yeah.
Jim Sudduth was at Texas Tech. And so within a 2-hour drive, which is
Oh,
nothing in
That's next door.
Those two guys were great, brilliant musicians and amazing educators, but they were about as opposites just in
Yes.
their approach to it.
I would agree with
Dr.
that.
Garner is very technical, not that he's not a great musician, but man, he can pull out technique
Oh,
just like
yeah.
that. And Jim Sudduth could take, he could take an air horn that starts a race and he could probably phrase it and make it sound like,
Yeah.
those type of things. So,
Yeah, you're exactly right.
I was kind of in this world of the two masters of both technique and shaping musicianship, but they both were great at both. It's
Yes.
just that what in my personal musical growth I saw is where I could really draw on that. So Jim Sudduth was my college band director, and I taught his kids at Coronado, no pressure. And but he would be very patient to talk about shaping,
Yeah.
and as far as tuning, it was great, but I mean shaping was his thing. Dr. Garner, you go up and do an all region band up and I mean, all of a sudden those fingers were slapping. I heard more alternate fingers, which was great. So all of that to say, and I'm kind of drawing what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Go learn from people.
Yeah.
How would I have learned what technique, tuning options I had unless I'd spent that much time watching and just collecting anything I could get from Dr. Garner? And how would I learn how to musically and passionately shape phrases and be expressive? All of that to say, I didn't know any of it. And I started going, listening, and asking. And I think here we are on a podcast. I think that's probably the one thing that we're missing in our profession. If anybody who's a young teacher or a teacher that's been teaching 25 years and says, Anthony Gibson didn't learn how to really understand tonality until 25 years into teaching. Now, I played the game, but I will tell you, it was an epiphany.
Yes.
Oh, it
Yes.
sounds like a bad word.
Yeah.
But I went, but that is coming from watching. It was when like I say, at band camp, Rodney Collette, they were the honor band one year.
Yeah.
Georgetown. And I went and heard their honor band recording, and I said, I got to learn. How did he do that? It's about how he gets that sound.
Yeah.
And, he worked with Sudduth a lot. And so I just said one year at band camp, I'm going to go to every rehearsal that he has that I'm not there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I parked my tuba spelled backwards in one of those seats and watched everything he did, how he did it, how they responded. And I walked out and you think, did it work? No. I had to go back the next day and the next day. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But when we got through, we'd go, both of us had an hour, and I would ask him, how did you get, well, you got to get them to, and Rodney can be kind of hard to, he's not just a cream puff, but over time I went, man, I can do that. And it took me to discipline my ears to develop that tonal sound, which when you make a good tone, you can't tune a bad tone.
That's
that
right.
one?
Yeah.
So once you make a good sound, you can tune your instrument.
Yes.
There's my saying for the day. You can't
That's
tune
awesome.
a bad sound.
And I tell you what, if you're a younger director or a director wanted to pursue that, YouTube is such a valuable resource to find those band programs. Find a band that when you listen to the YouTube, you go,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And directors, at least in our part of the world, it seems like, are very open to, if you just send an email and call and say,
Yeah.
hey, can I come out and just watch your rehearsal? I've watched so many rehearsals over the years just by sending an email or a text or whatever and saying, I never just dropped in cold. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of rude, but I've never had anyone say, no, we kind of keep everything under wraps over here. We don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But find that band that you get their sound. Because I think Anthony might attest to this too. There's certain bands you can hear their recording now that we're old farts. I can hear the
Speak for
recording.
yourself.
Yeah. And I can tell you what band it, I can tell you what band it was. It's like a fingerprint.
Yeah.
The
You're
tone
right.
of that band's like a fingerprint. Bonnie Anderson, her bands have a sound.
Yeah.
It's a warm, pretty sound with lots of French horn and not a lot of trombone, but lots of euphonium.
Mhm.
That's her fingerprint. And if
Yeah.
I hear Bonnie's band, it's like, that's Bonnie's band. I don't have to see her directing the band. I know what it is. So whatever band you're enthralled with,
Right.
call them and
Good
just
point.
ask them college or high school or even junior high nowadays. Oh my goodness. Some of those triple C middle schools
Oh, they're
playing grade 5 literature, so
Yeah. Well, Anthony, we at our podcast we have kind of recurring themes that I wouldn't say mantra necessarily, but one of those is if you're too scared to go ask for help, you're never going to get better.
yeah.
I
You have reached
agree.
your ceiling if you won't.
I agree.
Yes.
And there's nothing that is more humble to say, how did you do that? But once you ask it and then you get this warm feeling of, oh my gosh, my band sounded better, it becomes easier and easier. So take the first step and just ask somebody.
Yeah. That's
I mean,
exactly right.
people want to help.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun.
I hate to say it this way because it's kind of self-serving for me or any older director. It's kind of flattering.
Absolutely.
If someone emails or calls and says, "Hey, man, I remember your band at such and such, or the marching band you did such and such. How did you make that happen?" I can't remember a time when someone's called and I said, I'm really too busy for you today.
Yeah. Right.
I might say, hey, let me get right back to you tomorrow. You know what I mean? But I've never hung up on a person and said, I'm far too important for you. Goodbye.
But having said that, another one of the things I was going to throw at you, Anthony, to see if you at least smile about it. It seems like our mentors didn't really care as much about our feelings as some people worry about today.
They barely knew our name.
But it doesn't mean they didn't want to help.
Yeah, they would help us in the band. They just didn't know our name.
Whoa. Well,
But
that is funny. I'm going to tell you,
Now we're all triggered.
in the Allen band, I didn't know well, there would be 90 freshmen show up or 118 freshmen, and I had no Jay, who is that kid? His name's Michael. Michael. No, I might get to know him.
So you had to use spotters up in the deer blind. You had spotters, blonde clarinet, front sideline, hash mark, or whatever.
And I always
That's
used to say,
Susie.
it's like,
Susie.
Jay will know their names,
Yeah.
that's correct.
But no, you're right. Oh, you're right. I think that is probably the one area where we held so many of our band music idols so high that they were unapproachable and you kind of had to be brave. We're not that way. I mean, they think we are, but anybody else, I mean, it always cracks me up when somebody says, hey, can you come to a clinic? How much would it cost? Well, it's $100 an hour, or you can buy me lunch. And
Take your
they don't
pick.
get either they don't get it or
Yeah, I've done clinics for a bottle of bourbon.
That's right. Yeah.
Say how much? Just a bottle of Crown.
Yeah.
No.
But it's and it all depends on our schedules, but
Yeah,
more
and how
importantly,
close for me because I don't want to drive.
Oh, yeah.
6 hours for a bottle of bourbon.
Yeah.
But if it's here in town, it's like
I've known you a long time. You would drive 6 hours for a bottle of bourbon.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Okay.
All right.
So let's go.
I stand corrected.
I stand.
All right. I hope I answered your
It'd have to be a
question.
handle. It'd have to be a handle. Yeah.
All right, Mike. Warm-ups and tuning. What do we need to know to wrap it up?
Well, I just want to throw out two things. One is for directors to truly realize, most do, but some don't, that when a band plays at different volume levels, it changes the intonation drastically. If they play, especially like a marching band, if they play really strong in volume, it'll make the brass go sharper and the flutes go sharper. And overall, this is generic, a big broad brush, but the reeds will play flatter. So the kids have to adjust for that, and conversely, if they try to play really soft to do it. So if they can kind of get that their mind, they can fix a lot of tuning by saying, brass, you're going to get sharper when you play stronger. You got to do this. The other thing is the temperature. Not just a marching band, but in the room. And the way I did that with my beginning brass, Anthony will get a kick out of this. We had a refrigerator at the front of the, we called it the Third World Band Hall
There you
in
go.
Wiley. It was just
Mhm.
it was a prefab building with carpet and barely had an air conditioner. But I had so I would put my trumpet, the first class, I'd show my trumpet like a magic trick. And I'd go over and I'd open the door and I'd set it inside the refrigerator and I'd shut it and we'd teach the whole class. And then about the last 10 minutes, I'd pull my trumpet out. Then I'd try to make the first kid in the beginning trumpet class tune with me. You should have seen them squirm around trying to tune with, they couldn't get their slide out far enough and said, well, what made the difference? And just seeing the refrigerator and just seeing me play and seeing them play, it was like their brains wrapped around it. It's like, oh, you mean the temperature really does change the tuning because you
Right.
can tell them, but telling them is not teaching them. You got to teach them. They've got to understand that the pitch is dependent upon the temperature of the room, and we have to adjust to that all the time. So my big wrap up, I guess,
Wait,
other than those two
can
little
I interrupt
details.
that one real quick?
Yeah,
Because there's
of
so many
course.
contests, whether it was as a representative of the music store or as the announcer or whatever, so many times, I think it's important to say this for people that haven't, because you're talking about temperature. You would do
Yeah.
your warm up in one room, then you'd walk 5 minutes outside to the performance hall,
Which might be freezing.
and then you'd tune to that room, then you'd walk 5 minutes outside to the sight reading room. It does matter. You need to be aware of that as we move towards evaluation season.
Yes.
Think about that stuff and what the temperature is, and et cetera, et cetera. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, sure. And back to Anthony's point, I'm glad you brought that up, Derry, because I've seen and heard of so many, and I was guilty of this as a young director. You get in the warm up room and you tune everybody. And all of a sudden you got slides hanging out and you got barrels just barely attached because you're in tune now. And I finally would progress to Anthony's system of first chair clarinet play. And it might be 25 cents sharp. So we're all going to tune to this.
But it's relative. Everybody's
It's relative.
Yeah.
So everyone's tuning the whole time, but yeah, that's such a drastic mistake. You get all the slides out of wonk and the kids, everything's out of tune. And the kids are uncomfortable. They start to freak out on you. And I've been there and it was a nightmare. Made a 3 in concert that year.
Oh, yeah.
A 3-3-3. If nothing, I was consistent. Okay. It was a 3-3-3 in concert.
We were all in
And
agreement.
we were all in agreement, but I really feel most of that stemmed from my poor use of my warm-up room and trying to tune everyone to my little chord tuner.
Yeah.
And it was just downhill from there. But that was my 3rd year of teaching, and it was brutal. Poor kids. They all lived, I guess, but but it was brutal.
They'll survive.
But Anthony, what do you got for a wrap up, my friend?
I think your last paragraph that we were just discussing about it can become bored. The students can become bored of the routine and predictable warm-ups and tuning, but it's kind of like, what's coming, but it changes every day and it changes every student. So you're trying to make much more consistency. They don't have to wonder what finger to push down. All they're doing is listening, processing, and adjusting.
Yes.
Listen,
1,000 times a
process.
rehearsal.
That's right.
Yeah.
And until it's right, and if they don't get it, then we're going to say, are they sharp or flat? Flat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even the trombones know.
Yeah, but yeah, even the trombone.
Even the
No,
trombones know.
but and then somebody says, well, that you can't do that with a classroom. It's an ensemble. I mean, that's band,
Yeah.
So I've just never been with it. Oh, it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. They're part of that's like dropping
Making part of it.
a brick on your foot. Your whole body's going to hurt, not just your foot.
Yeah.
So we're all hurting for you. So yeah, I just think that whole just warming up and listening, it's all inside our heads, and then how to adjust it. Then they do it. It's pretty fun.
But I also think, and listen to me, see, we're supposed to be wrapping up, but
Here we go.
it's all perspective. I mean,
Yeah.
you can either go, God, we got to tune again, guys. Here we go. Here's the drudgery. Let it begin. Or, man, let's do this tuning thing and let's be awesome.
Let's make
And
it work.
See me have my baton. I was ready to go. But so much of that, I do think the listening's on the kids, but the attitude's on me.
Yeah.
Well, but your attitude will convey in their playing and their response. So
That's what
it's
I mean.
so funny.
Yeah.
And it's no longer you or me as
Right.
the conductor. It becomes
We're all
kids-
musicians.
the kids kind of turn their head and kind of go, nod. Yeah, that's good. They can hear it. And it's kind of cool. I mean, that's just.
My favorite, a couple of weeks ago, I did a solo and ensemble contest for a school district and judged the whole week. And I was walking through the band hall, and this little trombone player they were trying to tune, and the snare player was right behind them. And the kid played, and everyone looked confused. And the snare player goes, "Actually, that's second position, and you're flat." And so the kid goes, "What?" He goes, so everyone was involved in that rehearsal. The snare player was like, no, that's second. That's a natural second position.
That's crazy.
I love it.
They'd heard it enough times, haven't they?
I love it. I love
All
it.
right. Don't shy
fun.
away from intonation. Warm up.
That's right.
What fun.
Do the small things so the great things take care of themselves.
Amen, brother. Preach.
Gentlemen, thanks again. Hope to see you both soon.